Good evening. This is a tropical outlook and discussion for Wednesday, August 18th, 2022. The current time is 7:05 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Taking a look across the tropical Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico, not a lot going on. There is a little bit of activity and a few key areas of interest that we need to keep an eye on as we progress through the period. However, considering the time of year that it is and considering how quiet it's been, and also factoring for the forecast products we'd seen in recent days, it really looks like it's pretty quiet, all things considering, at this point in time. Highlighting a couple areas of interest as of right now, taking a look across the Gulf of Mexico. This is a very broad cyclonic circulation that is currently over the Yucatan Peninsula and is very slowly progressing towards the Gulf of Mexico in a pretty good northwesterly fashion. Now, ensemble products coupled with operational products maintain that this will come out of pretty much the east-southeast and move very close to the coast of Mexico and potentially be an impactor for the extreme southern tip of Texas and the northern Gulf Coast portion of Mexico. However, considering the location, the bias and location of the highest level of convection being located in the northeast quadrant, this is not something I am convinced that it's prudent to take my eyes off of at this point in time. So we will continue to watch this over the next 24 to 48 hours, see what its progression looks like, see what its trends look like as far as its momentum. However, in the event that this does make it into the Gulf of Mexico, this faces problems in a very bleak future. As this boundary here continues to progress south, this will impinge shear on the northern quadrants of the system and will help guide it inland and also kind of help shear it apart. So this here, not really expected to become too much in the way of a threat. However, the possibilities for this to bring some more in the way of beneficial rains to drought-stricken areas such as South Texas, the northern portions of Mexico, and as such, remains pretty likely as we move into the weekend and then into the early parts of next week. Moving on, we're going to take a look at the National Hurricane Center's forecast products right now. And what we see here is this is the actual center of the circulation right now. And they have upped the formation possibilities through the 48-hour and the 5-day marker to 40%. And that is the factor for this advancing into the Gulf of Mexico, hitting these latent warm waters and potentially being able to intensify marginally. Again, this is not expected to become a system that has any type of remarkable intensity, even though the thermodynamics in the water support this. How it's really going to be battling some mid and upper layer issues as far as atmospherics go. So this moving forward doesn't really look like it's going to translate out into much. However, we're going to move back over to here, and there's a couple other areas that I wanted to bring up as interest points. Now, there's a lot of convection flaring up here, and there's a lot of convection flaring up here, and those areas, obviously, given the time of year, they need to be watched. There's not a lot suggesting anything in the way of remarkable development with these. However, it would behoove us to kind of keep our eyes on this, considering how close they are to the contiguous 48 United States and any type of resident effects that could emanate in the event that a piece of this energy breaks off and does take on a life of its own, either in the Gulf of Mexico or in the extreme western Atlantic. So that is something I'll continue to watch over the next few days just to see what the trends look like, and then we'll move from there. Another area of interest to keep an eye on is this big conglomeration about to move off the coast of Africa and get into the main development region and into the Atlantic, eventually traversing an east to west fashion and getting into eventually the extreme western Atlantic and then into the Caribbean, where conditions are a little bit hostile right now in the western Atlantic and look like they may end up remaining such, at least for the interim. Now, this is in stark contrast to model data that we saw 48 hours ago. However, the models, as I stated in previous videos, I don't put a lot of stock in anything outside the 5 or 6 day marker. So when we saw the system that was progged to come in through the Caribbean and gateway through between the western coast of Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, that's why I said kind of take that with a grain of salt, but it is eye candy. I remember highlighting it specifically as that verbatim. But when you start to see things that show consistent rep, you really cannot completely rule them out. But ever since that the model data has dropped that solution, and I will show you that here momentarily. Moving on, we're going to take a look at the sea surface temperatures across the Gulf of Mexico. And right now, a lot of latent warmth is still present, especially along the coastal United States and northern Gulf of Mexico, the western coast and southern tip of Florida, and then the southern portion of Cuba, where this water is very shallow and has a tendency to effectively heat very well. Also, another point of interest here is this pool of warm water that's in here as well, and that is just fuel for a system in the event that the proper atmospherics are able to translate and come to fruition. That was one of the things I highlighted the other day. However, with this system that is cutting across the Yucatan and Prague to get into the extreme western Gulf of Mexico, it doesn't look like the atmospherics are going to cooperate with the system. So I'm really not anticipating much in the way of a threat when it comes down to that. Moving on, we're going to take a look. This is the tropical cyclone forecast product, and this is forecasting the probabilities for tropical formation over the next 48 hours. And this continues to have this area highlighted just off the Cape and off the coast of Africa. And this is in the main development region. However, as I stated previously, conditions in this general area are not exactly conducive for this system to really ramp up. Conditions in here are quite hostile. There's little pockets of wind shear, and there's some northwesterly flow that's been noted as well. So right in here, this is not exactly going to be the most conducive area for this. Also, the other thing that is present that I kind of wanted to bring mention to is we're going to go over here and take a look at this. Let me pull this up, and the Saharan air layer. And we talked about that. That was really waning 4 or 5 days ago, but also what we noticed today is there's a big old pool of Saharan dust that has managed to kind of translate down. Now, obviously, this is getting aerated in this area, so its particulate count, parts per million, has reduced with westward extent. However, this is still shunting some of the development and really introducing some dry air into the atmosphere, where systems come on here with counterclockwise rotation. Some of this dry air can be pulled down and around the circulation, and that really kind of helps to shunt any type of intensification cycles. However, as we get over in here, and this is a little bit of remnant that's on the heel of winds out of the east and being pulled into this area, that is present, and that is also keeping this area of the Caribbean shut down for the interim. Does this last? That's a good question, and really right now I don't know. We're going to have to play this by ear, kind of watch it on a day-to-day basis and see how everything transpires as we move forward through the period. But as for right now, doesn't look like there's anything on the table. There are probably to be a couple of decent waves coming off of the coast of Africa. Now, obviously, given the time of year that it is, we want to kind of watch this just to see what development tendencies look like over the span of time that is covered in the model sets. Moving on, we're going to take a look at the upper ocean heat content across the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean, and this still remains quite impressive in this general area, especially the Caribbean, where the upper ocean heat content is quite remarkable. So any systems that can get into that area and take advantage of that latent heat, that's energy for tropical cyclone development, and provided the atmospherics are cooperative with that, you could see a rapid intensification of a system, either a system that breaks off of the Central American gyre down in here, or a system that manages to remain relatively dry, come through that hostile environment, and emerge into the extreme western Atlantic. As that gets into a more favorable regime, you can really look at a shotgun intensification or a really rapid intensification and organization of that system. So we don't want to turn around and completely turn our eyes away from that, especially considering the time of year. Again, it is August 18th, and August 20th signifies the begin of the peak tropical season, and a lot of really crazy things can happen in that time frame that extends basically from August 20th all the way up through the end of September. So eyes need to be turned towards these areas, and we need to keep an eye on those. I'm watching every model run that comes out every day and just trying to see what the general tendencies are. So I'm the most primed to be able to discuss these with you. So moving forward, we're going to take a look at the 850 millibar vorticity map. This is the rotation in the atmosphere at about 5,000 feet AGL, or above ground layer. And that is a static, so it gives us a good barometer to look at, and it's a static standard, so we don't have to deal with any type of terrestrial elevation changes and as such. And as we progress through the GFS, which is traditionally the more aggressive of the model suites, we take a look and notice some of these parcels of energy here that are coming off of the coast of Africa. And notice how they get further west and start to lose organization and lose definition. That's precisely to what I was alluding in the comment I made about 5 minutes ago about the fact that we got these waves that are coming off the coast of Africa, but they don't really seem like they do anything. And then the 18Z, which is way out in fantasy land right now. I mean, you're looking at an hour 300 plus, does rep a system skirting the southwestern periphery of the high pressure, the Atlantic high pressure that is generally in this area, and kind of follows that contour and breaks off. Now, where it goes from here, it could go anywhere. So right now, considering this is in fantasy land, I'm not really willing to put a lot of stock in what I'm seeing right here. So, but in the event that that does happen, this does have an early handle on it, but this is also a time frame in which a GFS has historically struggled. So we're not going to put a lot of faith in that at this point. Now, if we see continued rep over the next 6-7 days, yeah, at that stage of the game, we'll start to lend us a little bit more credence. But as for this point in time, not too much to talk about. Also notice across the Gulf of Mexico, not a lot going on. You do see a little bit in the way of energy that focuses itself along the Gulf Coast. Those are areas that can kind of sneak up on us, and we need to kind of keep an eye on that. Also, as we look at the earlier portions of this run and we pay attention to this area right here that's associated with that area of interest in the Yucatan that's getting ready to break out into the western Gulf of Mexico, notice not a lot really transpires in that. And that's even in the GFS, which is a habitually aggressive model. So with this being as aggressive as it is and it's not showing anything, it looks like a very elongated pocket of vorticity. It doesn't really look like anything tightens up there. So not a lot I'm putting into this at this stage of the game. Next, we're going to move in and we're going to take a look at the euro, and we're going to take a look at the same product in the euro and see how this plays out, because it's always good to have a good comparative standard between the two. And we're going to go ahead and bump through the period. We're going to speed this up a little bit. You see the exact same thing. Some of these pockets of vorticity are out here, but they really don't seem like they get their act together, and not a lot translates. If you take a look here, it's a very broad area of circulation, and the thing about the ECMWF is it doesn't go out quite as far as a GFS. So it just goes out. This goes out, as you can see down here. This goes out to 240 hours, where the GFS goes out to 384. So not a lot right now to look at, but this does sign its name to the fact that there are some things going on out there. However, survivability as they traverse the Atlantic and get into the areas that we are the most concerned with doesn't really look too promising at this point in time. One of the things to note is a very broad area of circulation here, another broad area of circulation emerging off the African coast and traversing into the Atlantic. But as for right now, again, conditions in this area are pretty hostile, so not really a lot going on, and not a lot expected out of this. So moving on, we're going to take a look at the MJO over the next 40 days. And this does look like this enters a very favorable phase as we get into September. This was discussed in previous videos, and something that we just need to kind of keep an eye on. As of right now, MJO has kind of bounced back and forth over the past 3 to 4 days, so I'm not exactly ambitious about this being correct, but we're going to kind of keep an eye on this as we move forward. All right, this will keep it nice and short today. Hope you all have a good rest of your day and a good day tomorrow, and we'll post another update tomorrow around 7 p.m. Thank you.